Hello, and welcome to the Math Connection. My name is Miss Lenz, and we are going to continue talking about factoring polynomials today. So we have already learned several methods for factoring polynomials. The first one we talked about is called factoring the greatest common factor. And basically that means what can I take out of all of these terms? It's like reverse distributing, taking something out of each term. The second method that we talked about the guess and check method. It's like defoiling, and we're taking a guess at where we think the numbers should go, and then we're doing the OI check to make sure that we got them in the right spot. And those ones we can only use on trinomials, which remember means that there are three terms. The Xbox method, the one that we're going to talk about today, can also be used when we have three terms. So this one's also used on trinomials, okay? So let's take a look at what this method looks like. All right, it is going to, let's factor something that looks like this. 6x squared minus x minus 12. Now, the one that we just talked about was guess and check. I could guess and check this one. And when we guess and check, remember, we open our two parentheses and we're guessing. It's like the first times the first has to multiply to 6x squared. So it could be 1x and 6x or 2x and 3x. And we're putting them in there and then we're doing the OI check to see if we were correct. And this method has the same end product. We're trying to still get those two parentheses. It's just a different way of going about it, okay? So this method is called the Xbox method. And if you would guess, it starts with an X. So that's what we're going to start with. We're going to have an X. Something I want to say about this method, when you're first learning it, it's really inefficient. It's really like slow and clunky. But when kids practice it and practice it and practice it, you get pretty fast at it and it does become pretty efficient, okay? So keep practicing this method and stick with me for a bit here. So in our X, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to fill in the number that goes on the top of the X. And the number that goes on the top of the X we get by multiplying our first and last terms together. So we're multiplying 6x squared by negative 12. Negative 12 times 6x squared gives me a negative 72x squared, okay? That goes in my top. On the bottom, we are just bringing the middle term down for the bottom. So negative x is going to go in the bottom. Now, our next job is where we have to do some math. We have to try to fill in these two sides, the left and the right. And we get those, what we're looking for is those two terms, when I multiply them, has to give me the top. So it has to multiply to negative 72x squared. And it has to add to the bottom, so it has to add to negative x. So let's just think of the numbers to start with. We're multiplying to negative 72, adding to negative 1. Multiplying to negative 72, adding to 1. So I know that 8 times 9 gives me 72, and I can subtract those to get a negative 1, right? So I need to get my signs right. I need 1 negative, I need my 9 to be negative, and I need my 8 to be positive. Now I'm going to check those. Negative 9 times 8 gives me a negative 72, and when I add those two together, I get a negative 1, so that's good. But now we need to get our x's in there because our x's have to match too. So I need to have an x in both of these because when I multiply these two, that gives me a negative 72x squared, and when I add those two, it gives me that negative x on the bottom. Okay, so I have filled out my x. That's the x step in Xbox. My box is a box step. So here is our box. It's going to be a 2 by 2. In the box, our first term in our original is going to go in the top left, 6x squared. My last term is going to go in the bottom right box, negative 12. And these two that we found in our X, those are the two that we had to fill out. Those are going to go into the remaining boxes. And you can put them where you want them. Eventually, you're going to see what happens with them, so you want to be a little bit strategic about it. I'm going to put the 8 right here, 8x, and the negative 9x right here. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're trying to fill out the outside of our Punnett square. This is kind of like a Punnett square in science. So when I multiply this one times this one, I have to get 6x squared. And the same for the rest of the boxes. Okay, so the way that we want to do this is we want to start by looking at our first row. Let's look at our first row, and we want to think to ourselves, is there anything that I can take out of both of those terms, 6x squared and 8x? I know that a 2x can come out of both of those, so I'm going to put a 2x on the outside. This is how I like to start my Punnett square. Now the rest of it is just thinking about multiplication. So remember I just said this one times this one has to give me 6x squared. That means that this needs to be 3x out here. And I'm going to continue the same thought process. 2x times this top one has to give me 8x. That means that there has to be a positive 4 on the top, because 4 times 2x will give me that 8x. I'm going to fill out this bottom one that's down here now. So 3x times this number has to give me negative 9x. I'm thinking, what times 3x will give me negative 9x? This has to be a negative 3, because 3x times negative 3 gives me that negative 9x. And then I just like to double check this last one. It should work now. Negative 3 times a positive 4 does give me that negative 12. So what this did for us is it gave us our two factors. One of them is going to be right here, and the other one is going to be right here. So my last step is to write them as factors in parentheses. So 3x plus 4 is one factor, and the other one is 2x minus 3. Now remember what this answer means. This answer means if I was to redistribute all of these, if I was to refoil them, I should get my original back, and I'm going to show you that we do. Let's refoil. First times first gives me 6x squared. Outer times outer gives me negative 9x. Inner times inner gives me a positive 8x. And last times last gives me a negative 12. And if I combine my like terms, I'm going to get 6x squared minus x minus 12. And if you'll notice, this one does match my original. That just tells me, yes, I did this correctly. I factored it. When I multiply those two factors together, I would get 6x squared minus x minus 12. Okay, so this is the Xbox method. And like I said, this one is kind of slow and clunky at first, but some people get really, really fast at it. You'll get better at it as you keep practicing. So let's practice with another one. Let's factor this one. 12x squared plus 20x minus 25. Okay, so I want to just take a minute to talk about when I like to use Xbox the most. So if I tried to guess and check this, which is another way of doing this one, remember that's like what two parentheses could I have? And then the first times the first has to give me 12x. Well, that could be 1 times 12. It could be 2 times 6. It could be 3 times 4. And then the last times the last has to give me 25. That's 1 times 25 and 5 times 5. That's a lot of guessing where numbers go and checking. So it's not a super efficient method unless you get really good at guessing and checking. That one's not really efficient for this one. So when there's a number in the front of the x squared term, like this one has a 12 in front, that's when I really like to use Xbox. I think it's a good method for when we have a coefficient that's not just a 1 in the front. Okay, so let's use our Xbox. First we need an x. Here's my x. To get the number on top, I multiply my first term times my last term. 12 times 25, it's like having 12 quarters. That'll give me a negative 300 x squared. And the middle term right here just goes in the bottom. So I'm going to put my 20x down here. And now it's my job. It's my job to think of these two right here on the left and right. And I need to think to myself, what can I multiply to get the top, but add to get the bottom? Multiply to get the top, add to get the bottom. Well, I know that 30 times 10 gives me 300. I can also subtract those to give me 20. So 30 and 10. But I have to get signs right because I have to multiply to negative 300, meaning one of these two has to be a negative. Since they have to add to 20, my 30 needs to be the positive one. So I'm going to put the negative right here. Now they multiply to negative 300, but they add to 20. And then I need to keep my x's in there. All right, so I have x'd. I have finished the x part of Xbox. Let's do the box. Remember, the top left corner gets that first term, 12x squared. Negative 25 goes in the bottom right corner. And then the 2 that I found in the 2 that I filled out, like from thinking of what multiplies and adds, those go in the other 2 boxes. So I'm going to go with 30x here and negative 10x right here. Now, we're just going to get our Punnett square the outside of our Punnett square started by looking at the top row. And I'm just thinking to myself, what can I take out of 12x squared and 30x? I know I can take a 6 out of both of them, and I can also take an x out of both of them. And this just helps me get started. Now I'm just going to go kind of around my Punnett square. The first one I like to do is right here. 6x times this one up here will give me 12x squared. What times 6x gives me 12x squared? This has to be a 2x. The bottom one down here, 2x times something will give me a negative 10x. This one has to be a minus 5. This one out here, 6x times something has to give me 30x. 6x times what gives me 30x? Well, that has to be a positive 5. And then I like to just double check my last 2. Positive 5 times negative 5 does give me that negative 25 that's at the end. So I have my full answer now. I have everything I need. One of them is right here. One of them is right here, but we do have to write them as factors. We have to write them in parentheses. So my first factor is 2x plus 5. Second factor is 6x minus 5. They can also be in a different order. It doesn't matter the order. But this is my final answer. Remember, if we were to redistribute or remultiply that, we would get our original back. Okay? Let's try one more of these. We are factoring. Let's do 4x squared minus 24x plus 27. Okay? 4x squared minus 24x plus 27. Let's start with our x. Our x we're going to get by multiplying our first and last terms. 4 times 27. 4 times 25 is 100 plus another 8, 108. 108x squared. And my bottom is going to give me a negative 24x. And what I'm looking for now is to fill in the left and the right. So I'm looking for 2 numbers that I can multiply to give me 108x squared, and that will add to give me negative 24x. I'm going to think of signs right off the bat. First of all, I know they have to multiply to a positive, but add to a negative. That tells me both of these sides have to be negatives. They both have to have a negative in the front of them. Then they can multiply to a positive, but still add to a negative. Now I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me 108. So I'm going to go through the factors of 108. I have 1 and 108. Definitely can't give me a 24 when I add them. I have 2 and 54. Probably not. I have 3 and, 36, I think. Still not there. I have 4 times 27. 4 and 27, not there. 5, 6, 7. Let me see. What about a 6? 6 times 1, 18. 6 times 18, and there I have my jackpot. 6 and 18 I can add to give me a 24. So 6 and 18 will go on my sides. And I got to keep my x's in there. Okay, I have x'd from my x box. I'm done with the x step. Let's do the box step. Top left-hand corner, we get from our first term 4x squared. Bottom right corner, we're going to just get a positive 27. And these 2 numbers that I just filled in, we can put in our box. Now, I'm going to try to be kind of smart about where I place these. I'm going to put this 18 right here with the 27 because I know that a 9 comes out of both of those. Okay. So again, like you can look ahead once you understand it more, you can look ahead. If you don't do that, that's fine. You might just have to switch them. Okay. So we have a negative 6x in the other one. So I have filled in my box. Now I need to fill out the outside of my box. So we're going to just start with our first row. Our first row, what comes out of both 4x squared and negative 6x? Well, I know that a 2 comes out of them, or out of there. And I know that an x comes out of there. Okay, now I'm just filling out the rest of my Punnett square. So 2x times something gives me 4x squared. This needs to be a 2x. 2x times something gives me a negative 6x for this top right box. That has to be a minus 3. And then 2x times something will give me a negative 18x. This has to be a minus 9. If I double check my last two, that does negative 3 times negative 9 does give me a positive 27. So again, I have my answers. They're just along the horizontal and vertical axis. So our first one is going to be 2x minus 3. And our second one is going to be 2x minus 9. If I guessed and checked this one, eventually I would have gotten to the exact same answer, this one right here. Just might have taken me a little bit longer. Okay? So this was another method that we can use to factor specifically trinomials when they have 3 terms. If you want some more methods for factoring any polynomials, you can click on one of these videos over here. There's lots of methods for you. Please hit subscribe if these videos have been helpful, and I hope to catch you soon.